There's something I wish I'd said yesterday, so I was just like, I'm going to say it today. When we're talking about all the school library book banning and the idea that we're going to cut out books or that we're going to question books, that we're going to pull books, are we focused on literacy or are we focused on book banning? I heard all week long that our primary focus is literacy, but then what we're doing in the building is working on issues that are going to burden our schools with a lot of unnecessary complaints and systems and bureaucracy in that bill that passed this week. So that's my concern. Otherwise, I think it's interesting, we had a light week in the Senate. There's a whole lot of bills waiting to be heard, and so that's an interesting dynamic. Still no budget transparency this week, so we're not seeing any public conversations about those budget priorities, so that's a big worry for us entering this short week next week. Yeah. What do you guys want to talk about?
I know when we talked about it last week, it was fairly new news about Senator Mullen being moved to DHS. I'm sure you're hearing the same names that we are for that appointment. Any concerns with those names? What would you like to see out of this appointee?
I hope we have someone that's actually listening to the state and it's not just up there for their own personal profile. I think we need someone that's actually going to put the people first over politics, and I think it's kind of a relief that Senator Mullen had very much been on promoting the president's agenda for a while. So I hope that we can get someone that's willing to go up there and really do the work and learn and use that time for good for the people of Oklahoma. That's my goal.
Do you feel like with the names that you've heard that embodies that?
I want to see some women on that list. I'm pretty disappointed that the short list is, who knows if that short list is Stitt's short list, but I sure think there should be some women on that list. We've not been represented in the U.S. Senate by a woman, which seems a shame because we've got a lot of brilliant women in this, and lots more Republican women who've been in leadership. So I think there's plenty of folks you could choose that would be women.
There was I think, a time during the in-state tuition discussion and questions back and forth. There was quite a lot of questions. There was a lot of answers that were similar. There was some frustration that kind of spilled over to a possible point of order. What was kind of going on when that discussion on the point of order was getting done, and kind of what was being talked about?
Well, Senator Michael Brooks has worked very hard to try to help Latino students have opportunities in our state. And he works very hard with people who are undocumented, but who are trying to seek citizenship or official status. And so he has a lot of personal relationships. When the AG issued the order or signed the consent decree in the middle of the semester, Senator Brooks knew students who had to leave school because they couldn't afford it. So all of a sudden, there were students in school, they had already started their semester, who were told they had to pay 2/3 more than they were paying. And so the cruelty of that was very heartbreaking to Senator Brooks. He spent time trying to fundraise to keep kids in school. So that's very personal, but I think he knows why these policies are in place. It's for opportunities for kids. And so I think he came into it with that because he's already worked so hard to try to help kids stay in school. And then it was disappointing to him that the author would not address the real consequences of the change. And it's not the first time that Republicans haven't been willing to answer our question on the floor. I just think the way the author was doing it was especially frustrating to Senator Brooks. What we talked about up front was really how do the rules apply? And when we saw the Senate rules, which, the rules is what we're governed by. That's how we work together. Those rules are written by the majority party. We know that, but we did complain that they put additional constraints on the questions, but there's no compulsion to answer or in any specific way. So we were told, we're putting this in place because we don't want repetitive questions or questions that aren't really about persuasion. Okay, but what if no one's answering? What if there's no real answer? And so that's the hard part for us when we're asking questions we think are valid questions when you're changing the law. What kids does it impact? My questions about asylum, you say lawfully present. Okay, so someone who has an asylum claim really is lawfully present, but those kind of folks are getting deported and detained right now. So I think if we can't talk about the reality of how this law will apply, that's disappointing to me. And acting like immigration is black or white is not okay. There are a lot of people who are in process, are officially lawful but not yet citizens. We have people who are married and they don't have their citizenship. We have lots of green card people. I don't mean to go on and on, except that my colleagues frequently want to act like it's yes or no. And that's not fair because we have a legal system for this. So I think it was a very frustrating situation. When you're talking about kids and educational opportunities, and we know we need more college grads in this state, I think it was especially disappointing.
Can I ask about a House proposal that the pro tem said he's supportive of to add 7 school days to the minimum length of the school year? Curious to hear your
That has been the pro tem's, adding days has been one of his big priorities. I feel like the bigger priority should be on class sizes and trying to attract back teachers. And I think when teachers who have classes of 30 kids, are undertrained, don't have veteran status teachers in the school, here we're adding more days. I think it is a burnout situation at this point. And so to me, it's just going to make things worse. Is 7 additional days going to make a difference if you have an emergency certified or an adjunct instructor who has no training on how to lead kids and educate kids? Is it going to go better if there's 30 kids in a kindergarten? I think those additional 7 days will not go well. So I unless that was packaged with hiring a lot more small group, a lot more opportunities for assistance, that might make sense. But otherwise, I think additional days just sounds like a slap in the face to educators.
Have you been discouraged by the amount of time that's been spent in the Senate, and maybe if you paid attention on the House, to bills that revolve around LGBTQ issues? In the debate yesterday about books, I think an underlying theme of that was LGBTQ.
Yeah, I think you're right. I know the House has spent a lot of time on bills that I would consider anti-LGBTQ. We've seen anti-trans, and then of course the books. I do want to point out that some of the book banning was anything that might have a theme that was LGBTQ. It seemed to be considered inappropriate just inherently, and that worries me. But I think we're seeing a disconnect between what we say are the priorities and what people are asking us for and what we're spending time on in here. So, what I hear from people is, I can't afford my life, my job doesn't pay enough, my childcare is closing, and then we're spending time debating rainbow flags. I think we've got to focus on the most important issues. Even if it's something that's a hot button for people, we have to focus back on the important issues. So, yeah, I don't think we're spending time on the most important. I mean, yesterday, banning books instead of really working on the challenges that our students face, deeply concerning.
You mentioned childcare. There was quite a few childcare providers
Yeah.
up here yesterday.
Mhm.
I know that the COVID money was going to run out, and that's what we keep hearing. But do you think the state should step in at this point and try to help? Do you think that's even an option?
Well, I mean, what I understand, and this is just from Senator Hicks and Representative Schreiber, have been the main folks I've listened to who've dug into the issue. $50 to $75 million would completely set us back where we were. Like, we would not be in as big a crisis right now with 50 to 75 million. When you're talking about losing childcare slots, I think that's worth it, because rebuilding those slots is going to be so much harder. So to me, it'd be worth it. I'm understanding we're changing how we're spending the TANF money. I haven't been able to get the details on that, so I'd love to see that, because if we talk about not having childcare subsidy for folks who make more than, I think it's 50 or 55,000 now, you're dropping out a huge chunk of people who might not be able to afford going to work. And so I think we're going to undercut our own economy by not having those slots. I saw that Integris, and just in my neck of the woods, Integris is closing theirs. Literally the childcare across the street my kids went to closed. And I mean, these are quality childcare slots that are closing. They will not come back. It's going to take years. So we're going to have a situation where people can't afford to be a single family, working family, but they also don't have access to childcare. So to me, it's a crucial, critical issue and should be prioritized.
Yesterday you had SB 1209, the eviction bill.
Yeah.
That was heard on the floor and failed.
Yeah.
Could you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah. So 1209, Senate Bill 1209 is about the eviction timeline. So last year I passed a bill with Representative Pay that would have added 5 days between eviction filing and the actual hearing. Oklahoma has one of the shortest timelines in the country. This leads to a lot of challenges for families who are being evicted, also for landlords, because they have to fill those slots if people are evicted. People are more likely to pay before the actual judgment is finalized. This year, that was vetoed by the governor. So I came back with something I thought was way more modest, which was just to add Sundays and holidays to the timeline. I started with the Saturdays as well, but my chair of judiciary encouraged me strongly to amend that out. So I made it just Sundays and holidays, which I thought was kind of a bare minimum because banks aren't open. You're not getting paid on Sundays. You can't access legal help. So I felt like in terms of fairness to the person facing eviction, as well as the potential to have a reasonable resolution with the landlord, is improved, right? So anyway, bill failed. I know that I didn't work it hard enough. I should have gotten around and talked to people more. I also know that it's an election year, and this is a bill that if you pass it, it's because you understand the bigger problem and you're willing to go out on a limb, because there are individual landlords and big landlords that don't like it. So although the associations are neutral on it, that doesn't mean individual landlords aren't fighting against it. So I've heard from mainly a lot of mom and pop shops, and what I find from a lot of folks who are smaller landlords is that they might give people more of a grace period. So that by the time they get to an eviction, they're behind quite a bit, and it's hard for people to catch up at that point. But I feel strongly still that even adding an additional 2 days is a very reasonable amount of time to try to make sure folks have their next steps figured out, or they can go do some DoorDash and earn some side money. Basically, I think we're undercutting ourselves because we end up with kids missing school. People are in homeless situation, costs us a whole lot more to get them housed. So I am going to try to work towards reconsideration, but I'll have to do that by Monday. So I'm having a lot of conversations to try to push it forward.
You mentioned kids missing school. There's a couple bills down
Yes.
at the House. I heard that Rep. Miller's might be stalled because of lack of funding.
Yeah.
I think the fiscal impact was $350,000. Does that make sense to you?
Well, I mean, if we're not willing to deal with the housing problem on the legal front, then we might have to deal with it through the serving kids and serving through the schools. But I think it will be hard to get money for something through the schools that relates to housing. I think we have a challenge here where it's causing impacts to the workforce, schools, and more, but we're not willing to really put the funding or the subsidy in the other side. So I hope they move, but I know that it's fraught. It's a fraud. It's a broken market. The housing market is broken, and all the fixes we're trying to propose are not moving like they need to.
And Oklahoma has become kind of a magnet for data centers like that and large manufacturing plants. And they use a lot of electricity. The concern is that those electric rates could go on some residential consumers. What do you think about that? And you're supporting House Bill 2992?
Is that the moratorium, or is that what's 2192?
That's Representative Bowe's bill.
Okay, I haven't gone to read it yet, but I mean, I think his intention sounded good to try to make sure that, regular ratepayers are not paying for big industrials. That makes total sense. I worked on a differentials rates bill myself, but really left it to the experts there because it was something I wanted to work on, but I also don't have the expertise. So I think his approach is good. Haven't yet seen if it's going to make a difference, but on our side, I think we continue to prioritize natural gas over other energy sources, and we have to make sure that we're not holding back wind and solar development, because that's another big issue. If we're talking about getting to the volume we'd need to serve more data centers, we know we need a ton more. So, yeah. Anything else, y'all? All right, appreciate you. Have a good weekend if you get one.